DJ Payne 1.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CEO Sports Show. My name is Kris Kretschman. I'm your host. It is August 27th, 2025. It is also Wednesday. So here's the thing. It's funny because we are close to Friday, technically, because we're 2 days away. Like, we're closer to Friday than we are Monday. Kinda, right? I guess you could say that. Well, I guess you have to wait till midday for that, right? Like, midday Wednesday, you're closer to Friday than you are Monday. So we're getting closer to the weekend. I have a 3-day weekend. If you guys are working on the weekend, salute to you guys. The weekend warriors are much appreciated. You guys really help the world move and go around, and we appreciate your services. To the people who aren't working this weekend, 3-day weekend, and there's football on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, college football. I actually think that this weekend, you can make an argument that this weekend is the best weekend in football throughout the entire year. I know that might be crazy to say, but here's why I say that. You have week 1 of the college football season. You have a lot of great games that weekend, out-of-conference games, a lot of great out-of-conference games. And then if you work Monday through Friday, you have a 3-day weekend, and there's football on every single day. And you watch football on Saturday. It's great football. You start from, 11 o'clock in the morning or it depends what time zone you're in, right? If you're on the West Coast time zone, you start at 9 o'clock in the morning and you don't stop until 10, 11 o'clock at night. I love it. And there's great games on all day. All day there's great games on. And, LSU Clemson preview. Look out for that. That is going to be dropping on the channel, I think 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So look out for that. It's a great breakdown. I'm excited for you guys to check that out. So on today's episode, we are going to be talking about Arch Manning and why I think he could actually win Heisman, which is like kind of crazy to think, knowing how I've spoken about Arch Manning, which, by the way, hasn't really been that negative. I think people are kind of taking it out of context because I'm not saying like he's the best thing ever. And if you don't say that for some reason, some people get upset at you. That's besides the point. We're going to be talking about Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers. Is he on the hot seat for this upcoming season? And I'm also going to be talking about Dylan Gabriel winning quarterback 2 over Shedeur Sanders. But before we get into the episode, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. And without further ado, let's get into the episode. Okay, let's talk about Arch Manning, shall we? I really enjoyed talking about the Manning family, the first family of football. They are an absolute asset to the game of football. And let's talk about Arch Manning. I have said on this show that the Arch Manning hype to me is a little bit overblown. Right now, he's the favorite to win the Heisman. I don't agree with that because I think that both Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik are better quarterbacks and much more deserving of being Heisman favorites compared to Arch Manning, who hasn't played a snap in college football. Well, he has played a snap, but he's never been like the full-time starter, right? Like there's a difference between being the full-time starter and being, the backup quarterback who comes in when, the starting quarterback gets injured or you're up so much that, they come in and they play. The reason why I think Arch Manning could actually win this award is because there are 3 games on this schedule. I guess you could say 4, depending on how good you think Oklahoma could potentially be. But there are 3 games on this schedule where I'm like, if they win that game and he plays very well, and then they go on to win the SEC, which is very possible because of how good Texas is, he could win Heisman. If he goes into Ohio State week 1, first start, and he plays very well, he's going to have a very strong case at the beginning of the year to potentially win Heisman. I'm also looking at Florida on the road, depending on how good Florida actually ends up being. I think Florida's going to be a very good team this year. So if he goes into the Swamp and wins that game, that's going to really help his case. And he plays well, right? Because quarterbacks don't win games. Wins aren't a quarterback stat. But if he goes in there, plays well, and really contributes to winning for the Texas Longhorns, he has a chance to strengthen his Heisman case. If he goes into Georgia, plays very well, and they beat Georgia in Georgia, again, that strengthens his Heisman case. If he goes into the SEC championship game and he plays well in that game, I mean, and they win the SEC and they only lose 2 games this year, I think he has a legitimate chance to win Heisman. Now, to be honest with you, he's going to have to go 1-1. They're going to have to go 1-1. Texas is going to have to go 1-1 in those games. Ohio State and Georgia, both on the road. They're going to have to go 1-1. I think if Arch Manning really wants to put forward a Heisman trophy winning type of resume, right? Because you cannot lose both of your big games on the road, right? Like you cannot lose both of those games because then what people are going to say is, well, you beat all the teams that you were better than. And then when you stepped up in competition, you weren't able to get it done. So they got to go 1-1 in those games. And I think they will go 1-1 in those games. Now, I'm not going to predict a winner for the Ohio State-Texas game right now. I'm about 40% through my study into that game. I'm almost done with Ohio State. Then I'm going to move on to Texas. But Texas has a very good team this year, and they have the potential to win the SEC. And again, like if you have those wins on your resume, Ohio State, Georgia, and let's just say Alabama, I mean, it's going to be very hard to not give him the Heisman if he has a stat line around, let's just say 4,000 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions, somewhere along those lines. He's a Manning. He plays for the Texas Longhorns. They play in the SEC. And if they win those games, I think he's going to really strengthen his case. And he has the type of schedule to where you look at it and you say, man, if they're able to win, 10, 11 games this year, he's absolutely going to be up there in Heisman consideration. I just think that is something that I'm actually starting to look at and be like, okay, that's a little more realistic. And you guys have heard me. I have not been on board with the Arch Manning Heisman debate. Like I've not been on board with, hey, he's going to win Heisman. And I still don't think he wins Heisman. I personally think Cade Klubnik's going to win the Heisman. Plays for Clemson. They play in the SEC. I think they're going to go 2-0 against the SEC this year because I think they're going to beat LSU and I think they're going to beat South Carolina. And I think he's going to put up big numbers this year. And I think they're going to win the ACC and I think they're going to go 12-0 this year. Right. And if that happens and he puts up better numbers than he did last year, he has the talent around him with the receivers they have, with the offensive line they have, with the defense that's going to be able to get him the ball back. I think it's ultimately going to be Cade Klubnik. But I'm starting to get on board with, okay, I'm not buying the Arch Manning hype from the standpoint of he's the next Andrew Luck. I think that's a bit silly, right? Like Andrew Luck is the best quarterback prospect we have ever seen. He's not that, but can he be a really good quarterback on a team that wins a lot of games and put up really good numbers and put himself in the Heisman candidacy that way? Yeah, he could absolutely be that. Like there's no doubt in my mind about that. Again, like it's all about perspective, right? My perspective on Arch Manning is he has the potential to be a very good quarterback. But if he was Andrew Luck, I think we'd know by now. And that's where I'm coming from, where it's like, if his last name wasn't Manning, how would we be looking at Arch Manning? We'd probably be looking at him the same way we looked at Garrett Nussmeier when he started to become the starter for LSU, which is fine. Garrett Nussmeier is an awesome quarterback. Like he's a guy that could potentially win Heisman this year, depending on how LSU does. But that's how I think we would look at Arch Manning, where it's like, he's a really good quarterback. He has the potential to be a really good quarterback, elite quarterback in the country. But we need to see him play first. But he has the opportunity to. He absolutely has the opportunity. And especially, let's just say they go undefeated. hypothetically, he's going to win the Heisman. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. You talk about that last name, Manning, with a solid level of play that I think he's going to provide to that team, with the type of wins that they're going to have for them to go undefeated. You're talking about they're going to have to beat Ohio State in the shoe. They're going to have to beat Florida in the swamp. They're going to have to beat Oklahoma, who I think is going to be a much better team this year than they were last year. They're going to have to beat Georgia at Georgia. They're going to have to beat probably Alabama or LSU or maybe even Georgia again to win the SEC. The pathway is there. Do I think that it's a definite that pathway is going to come to fruition and that he's going to win the Heisman? I don't think that's a definite, but I'm starting to open up my mind to the possibility of, you want to know what? This could actually happen. This could actually happen. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but it could actually happen. And that's where I'm kind of at with the Arch Manning hype. Again, my preseason favorite to win Heisman is Cade Klubnik. Now, my LSU Clemson preview, I kind of just spoiled who I think is going to win that game, but I still advise you guys go watch that because it is outstanding content. I think you're going to learn a lot about both teams when you watch that video. It's very detailed. I did a lot of study into that game, just like I'm doing a lot of study right now into the Ohio State-Texas game. So, and that preview will drop tomorrow. And then we got Notre Dame, Miami. I'll get that out on Friday. So appreciate you guys for tuning into the show. Please make sure to check out the Stadium Pulse and the mic drop on Kretschman Media. You guys will find that in the homepage of the CEO Sports Show, the only CEO Sports Show. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. I want to move on to, I want to stay in college football, and I want to talk about Brian Kelly and the LSU Tigers, right? I think come Monday, the talk around LSU and Brian Kelly is going to be extremely toxic because I do think they're going to lose to Clemson. Now, there's absolutely no shame in losing to Clemson. Like, Clemson, to me, they're number one in returning production, number one in offensive returning production, number 7 in defensive returning production. They added some really good players from the transfer portal. Not a lot, but a few of them that are really good that are going to plug some holes on that team. They are an elite football team. They're my national championship pick. Like, I think Clemson's going to win the national championship this year. So if LSU loses to them at Clemson, there's no shame in that whatsoever. But there will be people that say, Brian Kelly's got to go. He can't win that first game of the season. He can't win these big games. It's not that he can't win those big games. It's that game in particular is just not a great matchup for them week 1. You talk about starting pretty much an entirely new offensive line, right? The only returning starter for LSU is DJ Chester. He's going to move to left guard. So every position on LSU's offensive line is going to have a new starter there. Every single one of those positions. Right? And you talk about they're going to go week 1, play Clemson. Clemson has the best defensive line in the country. They have 2 guys who are top 10 picks in the upcoming NFL draft. It's an elite football team. Clemson has a great offense, just like LSU has a great offense. If LSU loses this game, I'm not looking at Brian Kelly any different. Now, if they go out there and get blown out, fine. Fair play. But if they go in there and do what I think is going to happen, and that's Clemson is just going to do enough to win the football game, which is something that you're going to hear me say, whenever I talk about this game, I think Clemson is going to do enough. I think they're going to have enough success against LSU's secondary when it comes to the passing game. I think they're going to be able to hold up in protection enough for Cade Klubnik to make enough plays for them to get over the top and win this game. But if they do get blown out, fine, fair play. LSU, it hasn't taken the step as a program that people originally thought when Brian Kelly entered that program. I understand that. They haven't been a national championship contender. They haven't even made the college football playoffs. All fair points. Do I think, though, that Brian Kelly needs to be on his way out if LSU doesn't win the national championship or doesn't get to the national championship? No. Like, obviously, there should be expectations, right? Like, the expectation for this LSU team is that they need to be in that Final Four, like to me, if they don't reach the Final Four, this is like, that's bad. I mean, that's a failed season at that point, I think, because of the talent they have. Because of the talent they have at quarterback. To me, they have the best quarterback in the country. I know I picked Cade Klubnik to win Heisman, but I think that Garrett Nussmeier is the best quarterback in the country. Like, don't get it confused. I think Cade Klubnik's going to win Heisman because he plays an ACC schedule. They're going to go 2-0 against the SEC with LSU and South Carolina. And I think they're probably going to win the ACC. I know they're going to, probably definitely win the ACC. And they're going to go 12-0. So from that standpoint, sorry about that. My ESPN notification went off. So like LSU to me is a program that I think they're heading in the right direction under Brian Kelly. And you have to ask yourself, when we talk about moving on from these coaches, right? You talk about moving on from a Brian Kelly. You talk about moving on from a James Franklin. You have to understand what that does for the program. Now, all those recruits, all those players that they brought to the program because of Brian Kelly, because of James Franklin, because of Ryan Day last year, right? When people were talking about firing him. A lot of those players are going to leave the program. And there is no guarantee that if you move on from Brian Kelly, that you're going to be able to get a guy in there to be the head coach that's going to be able to recruit as successfully as he has. It's what I said about Ryan Day in Ohio State. Okay, Ryan Day leaves Ohio State. Are you sure that Caleb Downs is staying there? Are you sure that Jeremiah Smith is staying there? I mean, those two guys are the two best players in the country. No guarantee that they come back if they were to have moved on from Ryan Day. Just like Brian Kelly, there's no guarantee that the recruits that LSU is going to get are going to come back to LSU. That's why I always think moving on from a coach is the last resort. It's the absolute last resort. And there needs to be like a flagrant, like a flagrant violation of what the expectation is, right? Like if LSU this year goes 7-5, then I would be like, oh yeah, no, Brian Kelly has one more year. Like he has one more year here. But if they go 9-3, like 8-4, you'd be disappointed. And you would start to have that conversation. But I don't think it's just, hey, he's out. He's done. 100% done. I just don't think that that's the way you go about college football. Because again, like it's not moving on from a coach in college football is not like moving on from a coach in the NFL. A coach in the NFL, it's different because the players that they have on that team are all under contract, right? So the Cowboys can move on from Mike McCarthy and bring in Brian Schottenheimer and not lose Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons and the guys that they have, Tyler Smith. Why? Because they're under contract. These recruits are not under contract. We know this. We see this in college football now. You can enter the transfer portal whenever you want now. I mean, it's like the Wild West, the transfer portal. It's a completely different game. These guys aren't tied to these programs. So if you move on from Brian Kelly, there's no guaranteeing that the players that they've recruited, the young players that they have that they feel great about, are going to stay within the program. Look at what happened at Alabama, right? At Alabama, Nick Saban moved on, right? He retired. And look at all the players that they lost. They lost Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs, again, one of the best players in the entire country, top 3 in the entire country, at minimum, number 3 in the country. And they lost him because Nick Saban retired, right? It was a different regime. He explored different options. And that's ultimately the thing when it comes to these coaches. There's a lot of progress that has been made at LSU. It's not the type of progress that maybe the fan base wants. They want national championships. I get that. I understand that. They want SEC championships. And they have the right to demand that from that program. Why? Because they've shown the capability to do that. But I just think that a move that drastic requires a flagrant violation of the expectations that have been put on this team, which is They have a chance to win the SEC this year. I think they win about 9-10 games this year. That's where I have LSU at. I think they lose to Clemson, and I think they probably lose a game in their SEC schedule. That's just the way I feel about them this year. But I again, they're going to compete for the SEC championship. They're going to make the college football playoffs. And even if they don't make the college football playoffs, yeah, you put Brian Kelly on the hot seat. He has one more year to make the college football playoffs. And then you start to look at him a different type of way. Then you start to have that conversation of, we need to get buyout money together so we can buy him out of his contract. That's fine. I understand that. But again, I just think drastic measures don't need to be taken if this team wins 8 games this year. I think you should move in that direction, but not commit to it. And that's just the way I feel. So moving on to the next topic, we have, before we get into that, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. Please make sure to go check out the other shows on Kretschman Media. Make sure to go check out the Stadium Pulse. Make sure to go check out the Mic Drop. We have 2 more shows that are coming in the network on Monday, Tuesday. Got to finish out the details with them, but they are coming in the network and they will be here before you know it. And I can't wait for you guys to see it. We're going to move on to the Shedeur Sanders situation and how he got named QB3 in Cleveland and how Dylan Gabriel got named as QB2. Ask yourself this question. Who played better in the preseason? Not who played better in college in your eyes, right? But who played better in the preseason? And to be honest with you, when you go back and look at these guys in college, I think it's fair to say that Deion Sanders, being the coach of Shedeur Sanders, knowing all of his strengths and weaknesses, because he's been watching him ever since he picked up a football, I think it's fair to say that that helped out Shedeur big time. And that when he moved over to a different coach, somebody who isn't his father, things changed. Expectations change. You not doing what needs to be done is looked at differently with somebody who is just your NFL coach compared to your father. Because everybody knows this. You're going to give your kids more leeway than somebody who's not your kid. You're going to give them the benefit of the doubt because that's your kid. And I have no problems with that. But at the end of the day, when you talk about being an NFL quarterback, there are things that are expected of you. If you are not following the structure of the offense that Kevin Stefanski has put forward, guess what? That's looked at a certain type of way. You can have the talent. You can have the college resume that Shedeur Sanders has. If you cannot do what's expected of you at the NFL level, which it looks like he hasn't done to this point, according to the Browns and Kevin Stefanski, then guess what? You become the 3rd quarterback on the team. When you go into pre-draft interviews and handle yourself the way it's reported that he handled himself, it's looked at a certain type of way. You can't just go into these rooms and say, I'm Shedeur Sanders. I turn around this program. I turn around that program. Okay. And what do you do when you're on the field? Do you look like a legitimate NFL quarterback? And Kevin Stefanski came to the conclusion that no, he does not look like an NFL quarterback. I have to look up this story real quick. I know this is bad radio, but I saw a story where it was a Browns reporter and they talked about, hey, like, okay, I don't think this is this story, but that Kevin Stefanski after practice was helping Shedeur Sanders get more comfortable with the offense. This is not a sabotage. And I love, I love going at these analysts. I just really enjoy that. Robert Griffin III going on his show and saying, Shedeur Sanders is getting sabotaged. They didn't give him a fair chance, just like they didn't give Kirk Cousins a fair chance. But we all saw who the better quarterback was over time. And it wasn't you, buddy. So, like, RG3, miss me with that. because you, of all people, should not be talking about unfair treatment, because Kirk Cousins got unfair treatment. And if we're being consistent with what you're saying, he got unfair treatment. But did he get unfair treatment? Or was it the fact that the Washington Redskins at the time picked you second overall and they picked him with the 4th round pick? Was that the reason why he got unfair treatment, quote unquote, even though that's fair treatment? Because when you invest more in somebody, you're going to treat them differently than somebody you invest less in. I'm sorry, that's just football. I hate to let everybody know, but football is a cutthroat business. I don't know if people know this by now, but it's a cutthroat business. And when you invest a 3rd round pick into somebody, you put more time, effort, and development, trying to develop them more than the guy you drafted in the 5th round. Shedeur Sanders was not as good as people thought he was. Maybe that's just what this is. Maybe it's not Kevin Stefanski sabotaging Shedeur Sanders. Maybe it's not the offensive lineman not wanting to hold up in protection for him because they didn't like Shedeur Sanders, even though there were plays where he had clean pockets and he didn't step up in that clean pocket, deliver the football. Maybe it's just he's not that good. Maybe that's the case. I'm not ready to come to that conclusion yet because I did, here's my thing. It's kind of like the Caleb Williams situation where it's like, look, I watched him in college. I did a thorough study on Caleb Williams in college. I saw the player that he was, and I was impressed with the player that he was. I had a certain grade on him coming out of USC. I had him as my 101, best player in the draft that he was in. Like, best quarterback in multiple drafts going back probably to Andrew Luck type of stuff. Like when you talk about as a prospect, that's how good I thought Caleb Williams was. So I'm sticking to my evaluation. And if Caleb Williams doesn't live up to the evaluation that I put on him, is what it is. I'll take it on the chin. I'll do the same thing with Shedeur Sanders here. I had Shedeur Sanders as a 2nd round grade. He, to me, was like a top 35 player in this class. When you're a 2nd round grade as a quarterback, I look at you and I say, you can be a competent starter. And I believe Shedeur Sanders can still be a competent starter. But there are obvious things he needs to work on with his game. Obvious things. And Kevin Stefanski is trying to work with him. I promise you, Kevin Stefanski wants Shedeur Sanders to be this top 10 pick that people told the Browns he was, and people told everybody that he was. They want that for Shedeur Sanders. Why? Because they want to protect their jobs. If Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski want to be employed with the Browns organization for the next 5 years minimum, they should want Shedeur Sanders to be a franchise top 10 type of quarterback. Because if he is, guess what? There's nothing that buys job security more in the NFL when it comes to coaches and general managers than finding a young quarterback. That's why if Jackson Dart's good this year for the New York Giants, when he gets in, because he's going to get in, if he's good, Brian Daboll and Joe Shane are going to get 5-year contracts. Regardless if, they win 6 or 7 games, because they could go to the owner and be like, we found our quarterback. We found him. The coach and the general manager found the quarterback. We can develop this kid. We could turn him into a superstar. We have job security for the next 5 years because that's what young quarterbacks do. When you have a young quarterback and you see he's going to be potentially a really good player, you get job security. Brandon Beane, look at him. Do people think Brandon Beane is some great executive over there with Buffalo? No, I don't think he is. I think Buffalo has fallen short of where they want to be because their roster hasn't been good enough. Who's that on? It's on the general manager, right? Brandon Beane. So, do I think he's some elite executive? No, but he drafted Josh Allen, and he will always have that in his back pocket. I drafted Josh Allen. I was the one that took a risk and traded up for Josh Allen. The risk paid off because Josh Allen is, he's a top 3 quarterback in football. But ultimately, that buys job security. And if Shedeur Sanders was as good as people have said that he was, he wouldn't be quarterback 3. He would be over Dylan Gabriel. He's just not as good as people thought he was coming out of the draft. And that's okay. That's okay. Readjust your expectations for him. If your expectations, and I saw somebody say this, and they tried to sound smart when they said this. Shedeur Sanders is the most pro-ready quarterback since Andrew Luck. I'm not lying. I literally saw with my own two eyes somebody say this. If you readjust your expectations and say Shedeur Sanders could be a competent starter in the NFL, which I think he could be, then all of this, he's getting sabotaged, Kevin Stefanski doesn't like him, it all goes to the wayside. That's going to be it for the episode, though, guys. I appreciate you guys for coming out. Games this weekend, can't wait for them, but we are still on Wednesday. We are closer to Friday, right? 3 shows in on the week. Kretschman Media has been fantastic. We've been doing some really good work, and we're going to continue to do great work for you guys, and everything's good. And I hope you guys enjoy your day, enjoy your Wednesday, and we're close. We are close to the weekend. I promise you we are. So that's going to be it for the show, and I will see you guys in the next episode.